by 2050, will be 2 billion people over 60 on the planet. Never happened before. Already today, we are 5 generations living, working, voting, lining up in airports together. Just go around and look how the world is changing. It never happened before. So if we're not prepared, if we are somehow struggling about what we see still as a challenge, as not an opportunity, just because we're not experienced, we never did it before. Hence, it's also the beauty of the situation in which we are, because allow us to see how much we can do to change this game.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Personal Investor Podcast. I'm Ed Monk. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about one of the most significant trends in how we live as a society. That is the trend of population aging and the fact that we are living longer lives. It has profound implications for what society will look like, for how governments have to respond, and of course our finances, because it will largely fall to us to pay for ourselves during all those extra years of life. To talk it over, I am very pleased to say that I am joined by Nic Palmerini, Director of the National Innovation Centre for Aging, based at Newcastle University. Nic, welcome along.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Nic, why don't we start by you describing the work that you do and that NICA, the centre, does, and the challenges that you're seeking solutions for.
So first of all, the centre has been established by the UK government, the Ministry of Research and Innovation, so not the Ministry of Healthcare, which I think tells a lot about the purpose and the mission that we have. So our mission is just to explore what are the innovation in a world that is changing globally from a demographic perspective, and it requires to be reinvented from all the perspectives. So it's not simply technologies for older people. It's not simply waiting ourselves to get old and do something to fix the world that has been badly designed, but it's the other side of the apple. It's how we can design a better world through all the life stages. So we're caring about children and mothers as well, even if the title it's aging, but it's aging the process is not for old, which I think it tells a lot about how much research and innovation need to be on that side, and we're so proud and happy to do it. And we do it by combining what we define intelligences, the intelligences of data, research, innovations that are happening out there, and the intelligence of people that we combine together. So we always try to explore what is meaningful for us, involving the us in the discussion.
Okay, and people would have heard of this trend of longer living, longevity. It's been sort of recognized for a long time. But what numbers can we put on this trend for longer living? How will demographics shift from where they've been in the past, what they are now, and what they'll be in the future?
So first, let me do one thing, just like a baseline around the word of longevity. So it comes from the Latin, it means longus evum, and evum, so it's long evum. Evum, it's not time. It's existence. So in the world of longevity, you have the meaning of life, not simply the length of life, which I think it's the core discussion that we should have to put on the table. We're not caring about living for longer per se. We're just caring to live as long as we can, as healthier as we can, so that we can enjoy life as much as we can, which I think it's the core point. What is happening? It's a global trend. It's happening globally with climate change. So my first point is always start thinking about these two things happening to us in our beautiful planet, happening together. We enjoy a better planet because we are the humans that has the features to understand the beauty of the planet. So what I mean is that there is a reflection always between the climate and ourselves, beyond simply a pollution. Okay, I think it's the concept is broader and more correlated, which I think it's also represent an understanding that if we just throw the plastic somewhere in a recycling way, we're not just simply doing for the planet, we're doing it for ourselves, which I think we tend to forget. Yes. The other point is about the demographic trend. So by 2050 will be 2 billion people over 60 on the planet. Never happened before. Already today, we are 5 generations living, working, voting, lining up in airports together. Just go around and look how the world is changing. It never happened before. So if we're not prepared, if we are somehow struggling about what we see still as a challenge, as not an opportunity, just because we're not experienced, we never did it before. Hence, it's also the beauty of the situation in which we are, because allow us to see how much we can do to change this game.
And of course, we're living in societies built on rules and assumptions from a different time, from a previous age when we didn't have, as you say, 5 generations being alive at the same time. that's the challenge, isn't it? Or part of the challenge, because we're used to those systems and it's scary for them to be challenged.
I mean, it's such a good point because you're raising up one of the core elements. Again, we tend to forget it's culture.
Hmm.
It's culture, is media, it's how we are represented as all people is one of the discrimination that underlines all the discussion. We talk a lot about racism or sexism, but did we really understand what ageism is, which is the discrimination towards age in its whole spectrum? It's not only the old people, it's also for young people, meaning that it's something that still is not part of the common discussion. We give for given that we tend, to undermine older people because they're old. So what? And that all are changing also. I think it's important that we realize that what it's in technically is called in statistic equivalent age, that someone who was 70 in 1970 is very different from someone who's 70 in 2025 and has a different understanding. Even the brain is wired differently because we've been exposed to the last 30, 40 years to the internet. And then the internet allowed us to have access to information that our brain was not ready to cope with before. Hence, we're changing from this perspective, which I think it's one of the core discussion that, again, sometimes we tend to forget when we talk about what is happening to ourselves in a longevity society.
Yeah, and I think for many people, their idea of what an old person is sort of fixed in their childhood, probably their grandparents.
Yes.
And that might be, and then sort of cut to 50 years later or 60 years later, it could all change, but they still got that fixed idea of what an old person is.
Yeah, and again, we go back to culture. It depends where the cultural frame in where we're grown, the spiritual factors. Religion means a lot to aging and longevity. Think about the Native Americans, for example. For them, death, it's not something that happens as a disaster. It's just like part of the flow of life. And then it's not the purpose of getting old. It's just not to last as much as possible. It's just to transfer the knowledge. And again, it's a cultural trait that defines what old age is. For us, it has become a sort of an obsession to try to stay, quote, young, because we have to reflect what are, let me say, the media outcome, how we should have to be represented in later life, which I think it's an incredible stress to all of us, which is not putting the right, let me say, dots on the trajectory of our future life.
Yeah. Fidelity has teamed up with NICA to carry out research into meeting the challenges and opportunities of increasing longevity. And one of the things that jumped out to me from that work, there's some survey results. It was research into how much people underestimate how long they have to live. 2 in 5 people aged 50 plus risk their savings falling short by at least a decade, which is a big problem. Why do you think it is that people often fail to appreciate how long they might live? Because so often we're over optimistic in life, we're about the money we'll have, what we'll earn, all this stuff. But that people always seem to underestimate exactly how long they do have to live.
Yeah, so I think that there is one very important thing between you and me and everyone who's listening to us. We are all on the same page. What I'm trying to say is that we're all humans. And again, we tend to forget what are the human factors that make myself or yourself, besides our expertise or our knowledge, to take decisions like everybody. And these decisions are influenced by multiple factors, sometimes overestimating or being very optimistic or pessimistic about your future, not literally factoring in the things that could happen in life, and try to live, let me say, quote, for the moment. We did some research that suggested you feel old age is typically the next decade. So you see in your 20s who's 30 and old, in your 30 who's 40, and so on. Right. Yeah, and again, the perspective, it's quite limited. You don't think about the 60s or the 70s. And then when you do it, it's because you had an experience of someone older in life, which typically are family members. And again, you tend to reflect something that happened to them, but you don't understand what it could be referred to you. You don't tend to put yourself in that situation. So I think there is a very personal, individual, behavioral, cultural, experimental factors. Sorry for all these bubbles together, but I think are those that make us humans, and they make us to take sometimes decisions which are not necessarily wise because we're not good in thinking about our future. And the research is telling in a quite straightforward way, which I think it's so important and relevant, about how much when we're prepared for our future from a financial perspective. The financial perspective, somehow it's supporting the pillar that are more, I would say, quote, soft, are very hard for us, but soft. Physical preparedness, mental preparedness, social preparedness. So when you have some background from a financial perspective, these three dimensions, which are very human, very personal, are empowered. And then it's the other way around when you have a bad financial, let me say, forecasting, meaning that your happiness, your social relations makes your happiness. You're being mentally fit. You're being physically ready to enjoy life over time. It's underpinned on how much you've been ready to plan for your future from a financial perspective, which is the classic sentence should be, oh, money makes you happy. It's not that true. It's just understanding where are the money making you happy? What's the mechanism that makes you happy?
That's a really important point. I mean, obviously here at Fidelity, we're in the business of encouraging people to save for their retirement as an underpinning for those things. But more and more, I think we are seeing that retirement challenge through the lens of meaning in later life, and not just money for later life. And I think people can fixate on that moment of stopping work and having their financial safety net in place, but they don't think about really what has. I think men are actually particularly bad at this. I mean, this may be anecdotal, but you hear a lot. Men will stop work and then there's just nothing. There's just no planning, no kind of thought to what will give them meaning in life. What about the communities they want to be in? It was really interesting in the work to see you highlight those emotional and social elements as well as health elements and financial elements as well.
Well, it's so well put, the question. So I would say two things as a forward. The first one is that pension is a social construct. It's not given by the God. It's just given by a history of, as we know, Bismarck in Germany that tried to relieve the afterlife of people, but times of retirement and life expectancy was very short at the time. So we didn't change that things, and we think it's something that we need to receive somehow, which I think it's something that we deserve in life. But the key elements are how we translate it in the future, which is the second point of your question. In English, you use the word retirement. And literally should be a retirement from work, but it's coming like retirement from life. And I think these things are intersecting one with the other. I guess we should have to give a new meaning to the word retirement. So what is the life you have when you retire? Not from life. You still keep on living, which I think it's where I guess we should do a lot of work on ourselves first. So what we want to be later in life? What are the things that are meaningful to us? It's giving to others. It's just contributing to make the world a better place, which I think it's somehow, again, helping us to redefine the word work. Because we come from an idea that work is the bureaucratic cave we all have been living for the past 60, 70 years, right? But work is not anymore that things and won't be that things anymore. So I think it's where I guess we should have start thinking how we want to contribute our, let me say, to the improvement of the planet, because as the Native American says, when you get old, we should have to transfer that knowledge to others. So that's how you promote, let me say, immortality. That's immortality of ideas, of experiences that can be transferred to others. And I think it's there where I guess we should have to start thinking how we can better factor in our, let me say, future life and the more years we have available. It's an incredible capital that we tended to set aside because culturally so, the media say so, politically sometimes is easy to do so without thinking it's going to be the effects, not only on the economy, the effects on ourselves. Because if we're healthy, we're good to the economy, which I think it's something that we tend to forget.
Is it a challenge then that when you're talking about older people and giving them opportunities to contribute and to have these meaningful contributions to society and maybe earn as well, but those people may be the less or the least technologically savvy or literate people? It's the solutions might come through technology, but they're perhaps the least able to take advantage of those.
Such a good point. I think after the pandemic, we realized how much technology needs to have a purpose for people. And in fact, we saw how people using Instagram or Zoom calls that never used it before because they understood the purpose of that, let me say, a remote call. Before you didn't need it. You just make a phone call or just meet people. But once you were in lockdown and you couldn't do it, you learned to use that technology because you understood what that technology was for. So I think the key point is that make all of ourselves, not necessarily only the older adults, but I would say it's everybody. What's the purpose of technology? There's a lot of technology flourishing without necessarily a purpose. That's my first point. But the second, I think we are literally sitting on an obvious revolution, which is led by AI system and machine learning systems, which are allowing to access, thanks to what is defined as cognitive computing, to the usage of an incredible powerful technology without, let me say, specifically an interface. One of the big problems of accessing technology in the past was the complication on how it was so badly designed, and still we're surrounded by badly designed technology. This one seems that might allow us to access to an incredible powerful technology without necessarily knowing nothing more than turn it on, yes, having a Wi-Fi network, yes, quite powerful if possible, but then simply talk to it or write to it. And then you get back those incredible amount of information that if you are an expert, you're an engineer or an architect in your later life, you're 80 and you would like to design a bridge, you know how to do it without necessarily using a CAD system. You can interface one of these technology, will provide you back data. And since you know if this data are right or wrong, you can correct it and then help you do whatever you think might be needed, and then leverage your expertise and knowledge a lot longer in life. So I think a lot of potential is there.
Yeah, so using that technology to enable knowledge, enable that is still there and will be there into the latest life.
Yes.
And bringing that out and making it useful. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's amazing. I mean, are there any particular technologies that you're aware of, that you're excited about, that you're waiting for to break through, that will help in the challenge?
For sure. Let me say, in general, there is an incredible acceleration in understanding how we behave, or let me say, perform as humans. And I would say it's from the understanding of the biology of aging of all of us from an individual perspective. Longevity needs to be seen socially, but we have also to understand what are the individualities that make us different from each one of us. Everyone listening to this podcast is aging in a different way. So now there are technologies that can allow us to understand a lot more about who we are biologically. And I think it's very important to design, let me say, our future health. It's so-called the micro precision of this type of understanding. So AI and all these technologies will help us to understand a lot more quickly about what are the factors that can influence our health trajectory. So this is, I would say, is one domain. From an interface perspective, I think that what is being called the Internet of Thought, so interfacing technology, just simply thinking about it, it's becoming more and more real. And you don't need, let me say, scary, strange technologies of putting some chips in your brain.
Sure.
Just simply using some of the tools and the devices that are already on the market, which will enable a lot more to access in a more proficient way technologies. And I would say the third thing is just to how we can make more accessible in general. So far today, accessibility of technology has been mainly referred to the design of the technologies. I think accessible from an economic perspective. So access to a broader layers of society, which I think it's still one of the things that avoid us to have an acceleration on how we could live healthier, longer lives. Let me do the usual example. Tower Hamlet, Chelsea, there are 11 years of healthy life expectancy differences between two neighborhoods, right? Meaning that there are societal and economic factors, and it's related also to access to broadband, just to say one very basic things that allow us to then access those technologies.
Okay. Many of our audience are going to be thinking about their retirement plans, mostly from a financial point of view. They're going to be thinking about maximizing their savings and then stopping work. What extra things should they be thinking about that will give them a rewarding later life?
Yeah, I think it's, I know it sounds normal and obvious, but I think working on longevity as well as on your financial system, the 52 weeks of a year, or let me explain what I'm trying to say. Recently, I've been at a conference, there was the director of one of these beautiful super smart, longevity clinic that is suggesting that you can literally go there and then you improve your well-being. Question he asked to the clients are, why you're coming to us for a week? And the people always say it because we can do whatever we want on the other 51 weeks of the year. So basically we just come 1 week with the talks and then we do whatever we want. Okay. So there is a sort of a discipline in the process of aging. And I think longevity is influenced by this discipline. if you see the full life circles. As I was saying before, we have to engage mothers in the process of longevity, not only from a purely biological aspect, but also educating children to a better nutrition, to better understanding others, to better financial preparedness. It starts there. What I'm trying to say is that I think it's planning means have a sort of a discipline understanding. I would say, first of all, what are your priorities? We do checkup for health every year. Why don't we do checkup about our desires every year? Beginning of the year, just say, I want to achieve that goal. January commitments, right?
Yeah.
And then you check up in December, the same year, says where I am. I'm still aligned with my values. And I think if you go there, it helps a lot to understand what you would like to do. So why do we do for health and not for our desires?
Yeah.
If you go that way, I think it could help plan more wisely what's going to be your money trajectory, your income trajectory in the future, because it can allow us to think, why not get back to work in a certain times of my life?
Yeah.
And then if you go there, then how I can empower a society to be more ready to accept people in later life to come back to work, because it's part of the play. We can't wait only others to act for us. We could be part of the discussion if we push a little bit governments, local system to give us opportunity, also the private sectors, to be wiser and take back that incredible knowledge that we have somehow retired and bring it back to our life, because I think it's there probably the key for the future.
Okay, well, that feels like a pretty good place to end things, Nic. That is all the time we have for now. I will just say that if you found this video useful or interesting, to please subscribe to the channel. Give us a like, join the discussion in the comments if you want to do that. It really does help other people find what we're doing here, and it means that you're going to get new content as it is released. That said, Nic, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.